It's been a tumultuous offseason for the New York Rangers. Lots of changes, but are they better than they were a year ago? John Chick of Locked On New York Rangers joins us to discuss that and the future of the Broadway Blueshirts coming up next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On New York Rangers, the one and only John Chick. And John, I'd be lying if I said it was a quiet offseason on Broadway for the Rangers. What do you think overall of the moves that the team has made, and is there a plan that you see overall?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of these moves basically were just kind of born out of necessity. I mean, you look at the trade of Chris Kreider. Now, I get it. There's still some Ranger fans that are upset about this. They're mad about this, and, they'll never forgive Chris Drury, and I understand all that. I can understand, obviously, making a connection with these players, especially one that's been here for a decade and a half as he has. But I think it gets to a point sometimes in pro sports, whether it's the Rangers or anybody else or any other sport, where it's just time. It's just time for a player and a team to go their separate ways. And I think that's where we got with Chris Kreider. Last season was bad, not just for Kreider. It was bad up and down all over this roster, just a collection of underachieving players. And when you look at what's going on with this team right now, with Kreider, they needed to move on from him to add a little bit of salary cap space. And they needed to potentially open up a spot for, some of these young forwards that they're really excited about. I mean, especially Gabe Perreault, but even guys like, Brett Berard, Brent Hoffman. It'll be interesting to see how Hoffman can do in a, potentially a bigger role this upcoming season. But again, sometimes it's just time. And I think that's where we got with Kreider. And the other really big move that they made was, of course, the free agent signing of Vladislav Gavrikov. And I had mixed feelings about that going into the offseason because you look at this free agent market, it's not as strong as some other classes that we've seen. No disrespect to any of the players, obviously, but it felt like they wanted to go get Gavrikov just because he just happened to be the best lefty defenseman available. But then you think about it, and it's like, well, again, weak free agent class, a bunch of guys that were going to be free agents re-sign with their current team right before the 0 hour, so it becomes an even weaker class. Bottom line, the Rangers addressed a position of need. They went out and they made themselves better, and they got one of the best free agents available in this year's class. So it's like, how upset can I really get about that? You know what I mean? So overall, I think it's been good. I think the K'Andre Miller trade was good. Again, I think they kind of just got to a crossroads with Miller where they either had to pay him or trade him. They chose the latter. And to get a first, a second, and a pretty promising prospect in Scott Morrow as well, I think they did a nice job there too. So overall, mixed feelings on the offseason, but I think there's been more good than bad for sure for the Rangers.
Is this a retool, a rebuild, and is this a better team today than they were a year ago? I know they struggled on the ice, but on paper, they were just a year removed from a President's Trophy.
Yeah, I think I would definitely call this a retool as opposed to a full-fledged tear-down rebuild. I mean, on one hand, it'd be harder for them to even rebuild because so many guys have no move clauses, but, I don't think they're going to look to trade Igor or Fox, regardless of what the situation is. You leave those guys there and you build around them. But yeah, I would certainly call this a retooling. As far as being better than they were last year, like at the start of the season, it's kind of a loaded question because this roster has changed so much. Like they changed more in one calendar year than I think the last 4 years before that. It's crazy. I was going through the numbers the other day on my show, and I think they're missing like 9 guys that were on the opening night roster last year. Lindgren was hurt, but if you count him, it would be 9. But are they better? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And something else that I've been talking about on my show is I do think that the truth with this team lies somewhere between the two extremes, because 2 years ago, best record in the NHL, President's Trophy winners. everything clicked. Everything was just magic that season until the very end when, they run into the brick wall that is the Florida Panthers. But then last year, it's like you watch them and something just went wrong in that locker room. And to this day, I can't quite put my finger on everything that happened last year. We'll be here all night if I try to figure that out. But, overall, I think the truth lies somewhere between those two extremes. I certainly think they're a better team than what they showed last year, even with all the changes that they've made.
You talked about something was going on in that locker room. Have the changes to the coaching staff, to the roster, have they addressed those issues adequately?
Yeah, we don't see everything, obviously, that goes on behind closed doors and everything, but, they wanted to shake things up a little bit, and they've done that. In the last calendar year, you trade, your captain, Jacob Trouba. You trade the longest tenured Ranger by quite a bit in Chris Kreider. You move on from Philip Hedl and Capo Caco and guys like that. Caco was traded for Borgen, and Hedl was part of the deal that brought back JT Miller to the Rangers. I think that's obviously a huge move. That's a move where you're looking to shock the system a little bit. You're looking to change the culture, and you're looking to bring in somebody that just despises losing, and that's JT Miller. And for my money, I don't know if they're going to name a new captain before the season starts. I almost think they're not going to for some reason, partially because Mike Sullivan's here. He's a new coach, probably wants to see how these guys interact and who the next captain should be. But if they're going to put the C on somebody, it's a little bit of a roll of the dice because we know that JT Miller, for lack of a better term, can be a little bit of a hothead at times. But be that as it may, he plays with a ton of intensity. He's a heck of a player. And again, if you want to really jolt this team a little bit and say we're going in a different direction, we're going to play some straight line hockey, I think JT Miller's your guy.
What does the new coach bring to the locker room that was needed for this team?
It's hard to say for sure. I did a crossover with Hunter and Patrick of Locked On Penguins. Not that I don't know Mike Sullivan, but obviously they see quite a bit more of him than I have over the past decade or so here. To me, he brings instant credibility with the 2 Stanley Cups right out of the gate with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Obviously, the Rangers going with a retool. You can kind of talk yourself into that as a Ranger fan, right? Like he had immediate success the second he took the reins in Pittsburgh. So there's that. I'm hoping that he's a little bit more willing to play some of the young guys than maybe some other Ranger coaches have been. Although you look at coaches across this league, it feels like just about every single one of them, to at least some degree, tend to defer to the veterans just a little bit. But I'm hoping Sullivan will give somebody like Gabe Perreault a chance. Brett Berard is somebody that's under the radar, 5th round pick, but I really like what I've seen. He's played well at every level of hockey, and I thought he looked good for the Rangers last year. So I'm hoping these kids get a chance. And something else you got to do, I think, for sure, is fix these special teams units. You got to get a better power play. They go from top 3 in the league to bottom 5 in 1 year. And even the PK, like last year, they finished like 11th or 12th, but man, that unit fell apart at the end of the season. And you got to get that back on track for sure, too, among several other things.
What is on the to-do list personnel-wise, or do you think they're done for the rest of the offseason?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this the other day. They don't have a ton of cap space. Right now, Puckpedia shows them at $777K. But if you have to also factor in that they're showing them with 23 players on their roster. So if they choose to carry 22 or even 21, you could potentially look to still add somebody. But I don't know. When you look at the free agent market right now, there's nobody there. Like pretty much everybody's signed. I don't even know what the move would be. And honestly, since they're looking for a retool and they're looking to contend this year, I think the better play is to not add anybody at this point, unless it's like somebody on a PTO or, somebody at the league minimum. You don't add anybody. You accrue as much cap space as possible so that heading into the trade deadline this year, you can make a move or two if you're in position to do so and add to this team. But who knows what it's going to be? This is going to be, I think, my 6th year of doing this. And this year, more than any other, I have no idea what to expect from this team. Like, I'm trying to figure it out, trying to talk myself into this whole retooling, and it's going to be a good season. But, man, this could go any which way of about, 50 different ways this season for the Rangers. It really could.
What do you think is their biggest need as of now?
Well, it depends how they line up, because if they line up, and I want them to do this, I want them to put Mika Zibanejad on the wing with JT Miller. Mika got off, and he's not the only one, let me make that clear, but he got off to a miserable start with the Rangers this past season. Once the trade for JT Miller was made, and they pretty quickly decided to put the two of them together, Mika started playing a better brand of hockey, and it wasn't even just the scoring. That certainly improved as well. There were 1 or 2 times where he legit trucked somebody last year, like an open ice after he started playing with Miller. So I think Miller's style of play, he's just one of those dudes, by his style of play, he's going to hold guys accountable. much less like if he has to get in your face or anything. But I honestly think just the way he plays, you're going to have to play a certain style of hockey just to keep up with him. And I think we saw that with Mika. The only issue there is if Mika plays with Miller, then we don't know who's going to center the third line, because Trocheck will be centering another line in the top six, So in that situation, you're looking at either Brodzinski or Parsonen. And honestly, like I like Brodzinski. I know he's just like this random like role player who's kind of an NHL, AHL swingman for his career, but I think he's a better player than people realize. I'd like to actually see him get a chance and leave Mika with JT Miller. Give Brodzinski some run. I think he's earned it. He played hard last year. He's a good leader for some of the young guys. Let's see what he can do. And if it doesn't work out, you can put Mika back at center. You can go out and make a trade, whatever you got to do. But I'd like to see that at the start of this upcoming season. All
right, John, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere you're, listening to this, watching this, we're there. We're on YouTube. We're on every audio streaming platform you can possibly think of. And you can find me on Twitter at jchick17, at jchik17. So, yeah, definitely give us a follow. We'll talk some Ranger hockey.
Sounds good. John, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Gil. Appreciate it.